time, bro.
All right, are we going to go?
All right, guys, Mark, we're live. We're live.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of Police Off the Cuff After Hours. My name is Mark DeMeo. I'm here with my co-host, and he's my partner in all things law enforcement, Bill Cannon. Hi, Bill.
Hey, what's going on? I was a little nervous. Scott got here late, man. And, there's no car, there's no traffic. There's a lot of rain, but shit.
A lot of rain.
So today we're doubling up on our guests. We have a special episode for everybody. We have two guests. One of our guests is returning for his third time now. He was on his own episodes. Then he came to our live comedy show. He sat with us there, and he's back tonight. What's up, Scott Wagner?
He's a frequent flyer. This is his third time. I forgot about that.
Yeah. What's up, Scott? How are you?
How are you guys? Pleasure to see you all. It's been a long time.
Where are you?
I'm in Brooklyn, in my house.
Oh, okay. All right.
I'm in my kitchen, actually.
Manhattan makes it and Brooklyn takes it.
You got it.
There you go. And we have another guest today. It's our first time on for our next guest. His name is Bill Ryan. He's a retired NYPD cop. The last 13 years he did on the NYPD, he worked in Arson and Explosion. That's a pretty interesting unit to work in. And after that, he retired and he became a private eye. He's got a long history in theater and in comedy. And he's starting to write now. His boss used to be Peter J. Franzo, Bill.
He's watching now. Pete's watching.
Another one of our guests, a legendary guest.
Pete's always watching.
So welcome, everybody.
Welcome. Nice to meet you, Bill.
Thanks for having me.
You're talking to
My
me.
pleasure.
No, I know you. I'm talking to Bill Ryan.
Bill Ryan.
I'm sure we've crossed paths at some point in time because we're contemporaries, but we never met face to face. We've been friends on LinkedIn all the time.
Well, technically,
it's a funny thing. I mean, there's so many guys on these pages that you're friends with for years on internet, and you never met. I've never met Mark, and I've never met Bill Cannon.
Well, Bill was my boss for a while, so it's a small world.
The 2-3 here. So these guys are both Scotty and Bill Ryan are anti-crime warriors from contemporary warriors, and I thought that would be one of the big topics we speak about tonight, since it's got to be going on at least a week, going on 2 weeks, that the NYPD decided in their infinite wisdom. I'm sure it wasn't their idea, it was the mayor's idea to get rid of anti-crime, and I think we have two excellent guests to talk about the ramifications of such a horrendous policy.
No, it's terrible.
Well, my feeling on it is, I'm sorry, I don't want to step on anybody, but the abolishment of the anti-crime is just telling. It's like giving permission to every perp on the street, go carry a gun, because the anti-crime cops are the gun cops, and the street guys know this. So, I mean, we've had a 200% uptick in shootings in this month alone, and there's no end in sight. We've had over 119 or 125 shootings, with I think 83 hits, in this month alone, and that's 200% over last year at this same time. And what does that tell you?
It was a bad mistake.
What does it tell you, Scott? Tell me. I don't know.
It tells me that the PC, the mayor, gave the okay to go shoot it up, and between the proliferation of fireworks that are masking the gunshots, it's out of control. It's totally out of control. Every day, we're turning into what Chicago has become. We're going back to 1996 numbers.
What do you think, Bill? Bill,
Bill 1, Bill 2. I mean, here's my thing. I mean, I believe anti-crime certainly is a tremendous program. I think what we're going to see is much like after the Knapp Commission, where you had cops who were afraid to do anything with narcotics enforcement, and what ended up happening is you had a generation of cops who weren't locking guys up selling drugs. So the drugs grew until they started having the TNTs and the 80s and the 90s. And I think you're going to start seeing that with guns now. People are going to be less afraid because they're seeing there's no one being caught. And I don't disagree with Scott that, the marching orders are coming from the mayor, but I mean, just something to consider. And it's not that I'm friends with Shea, because I'm not, or Terry Monahan. I mean, I don't know these guys other than who they are. But I mean, if I'm Shea, maybe I'm going to sit back and say, you know what? They're not prosecuting anybody we're locking up. If these guys are out there and they're using any kind of force or any kind of aggression, they're kind of being held accountable and to a level that really is not ever been seen before. It's not even reasonable. So maybe they're trying to protect here's how we do this. We put everybody in the bag, and unfortunately everybody becomes a report taker, and you don't have active guys out there. And it's a shame because guys are retiring, and once that skill is gone, who's going to be there to teach it? I mean, when I went to the great street crime unit in the 80s, I had guys that taught me. I thought I was hot till I got there and I saw what hot was. And, you're not going to have guys that have that skill in it. It's, it's like any skill. If you don't practice it and pass it on, it's not going to be there. And you've got generations of cops that are just not going to know how to do that again. And, there's not bosses out there to teach it. I mean, I had people like Pete Branzo to show me how to do things and how to handle people. Once that knowledge is gone, it's not coming back. But, I'm worried about it. I live in the city. I live in the Bronx. I don't like seeing this, but, I think that it's the new reality and we're going to have to deal with it.
I'm in the Bronx too, man. We got to hang out.
Well, my opinion on this also is I was in anti-crime for 6 years, from 82 to 88. And the skills that I attained in anti-crime to me is the minor leagues for the Detective Bureau. I've never worked with one detective in my entire career that did not do a stint in a precinct anti-crime or street crime. And
well, you know what I did, and they were dead.
That's where you learn your interview skills. That's where you learn to develop CIs. That's where you learn to talk to people. That's where you learn to watch people. That's where you learn all of the instincts you need to be a good investigator. And now, with all the old timers who are there, who, no one is going to stay past 20 now. The writing's on the wall. I mean, it's almost 300 guys just put in their papers as soon as they hit their 20th anniversary. No one's staying any longer to teach the new guys. So where are the new detectives supposed to get, their street smarts, their qualities to become an investigator?
What were you going to say, Billy Ryan? What was Billy Ryan going to say?
I don't disagree. I mean, one of the things, like, my first day as a retired member of the department was teaching interview and interrogation at the police academy. I was a friend of Tom Nerney, the late Tom Nerney, great retired first grader.
Great guy.
MHK squad. And I was best, the salt of the earth. He was kind of a mentor to me, and he had me, I was kind of his substitute teacher during the interview and interrogation classes they would give in the academy. And I would do this on my time. I would come in ahead of time from work. It's funny, I could never get, even when I was on the job, I could never get the job to let me do it on job time. But it was important to me to teach that skill and pass it on. And I think it's an underappreciated skill. I don't know why the department doesn't spend time on it, even when you come into the Detective Bureau. But I think that, or at least I thought at that time, they were going to start doing that, taking guys who are retired, showing them things. I think, unfortunately, when you're retired, they can't say, we don't want you saying this, we don't want you saying this, make it more like this. And, I always tell the truth to the class. I mean, hey, this is how you do it. I've taken tons of statements. I'm very proud that I've never had a statement in my whole career suppressed. It's probably, I'm not a great driver. I think it would work with you. I can't drive. I can kind of shoot, but the only thing I can do is I can talk to people and take good statements. And that's kind of where I had my success.
Guys,
like the anti-crime work, no one's teaching.
One of the things
I'm sorry, Mark.
If I could just interject something. For people that aren't cops that are listening to this show, one of the things that anti-crime has that is such an advantage is the stealthness of being in plain clothes, of being in an unmarked car, and being able to observe before you move in like a lion moving in for the kill. because you're able to observe. I did 6.5 years in anti-crime, 3.5 as a cop and 3 as a sergeant. And those observation skills become keener and keener as you do it. All you do is 8 hours a day is observe, watch people, how they move, how they talk. Hey, is someone disrespecting someone? Look at their face, look at the way, look at their waistband. All of those things you learn in anti-crime, those are skills that are going to go out the window.
Well, once again, when I went into crime, and this is back in the 80s, 82, we used to grab at least 4 guns a week. And that's in the early 80s. Now you can imagine what's out there now with the proliferation of firearms compared to then, and I worked my whole anti-crime career in Manhattan North, the confines of the 2-3, the 2-5, the 2-8, the 2-4, and I ran into you when you were in crime in the 2-4 and I was in crime. I mean, again, we took it wasn't a complete week unless we got at least 3 or 4 guns.
Scotty, there was a perfect anti-crime potential collar in Brooklyn the other day, but instead it was a double murder.
Exactly.
With a long overcoat in the hot weather with a rifle concealed under it, and he executed 2 people on a stoop.
In broad daylight, noon.
At 12 noon, yeah. That's a
13
perfect
shots.
anti-crime collar, right?
Perfect. But again, I have a son who's on the job, my oldest. He's in Brooklyn North. And, I can't even, he asks me questions. I can't even give him answers. I tell him, unless right now, the way things are, unless it's a cop calling for help, go balls to the wall. Otherwise, just arrive safe.
You're going to they're going to turn them into report takers. That's what they're going to be.
Unfortunately, that's what they have to do unless they're actually sitting in a location and they observe, a gunfight right in front of them. How else are they going to, there's no more jumping anyone. There's no more jumping out. Even in uniform, we used to do observation. We used to park and just watch people. And also the visibility. You don't know how many robberies you prevented just by being out there. Right. Because all the folks knew who the anti-crime guys were. They all knew the cars, the cabs. They knew we were out there, and yet they were in fear of us. So where was the guns? The guns were on the car tires. The guns were in the bushes. The guns were in mailboxes. Wasn't so many times that the guns were on the persons.
Right.
You observe someone, you'd watch for the overt gesture, and again, there came in stop, question, and frisk. You saw that overt gesture, gave you reasonable suspicion. Then you went up to the guy, saw the bulge, you patted him, you frisked him for your safety. Bang, gun collar.
All right, so we all know what's going on here right now. They got rid of the anti-crime. So that leaves us with this. Why? Billy, why Billy Ryan, why do you think they did this? But give me your best conspiracy theory.
Well, you're coming to the right guy. I've got a couple, but I mean, I'm kind of torn. One side of it is like I said a little while ago, maybe this is the department saying, you know what, guys going out there being aggressive, taking the guns, they're getting jammed up. The DAs aren't prosecuting the cases. With bail reform, no one's staying in. Why put our guys in positions to have to make those collars? You
think it's actually the job?
That's at least I think.
You think the job to consider? You think the job pulled it up?
I think the job pulled these guys. I think it's a combination. I think the mayor,
suggested it maybe.
I think the mayor wanted less violence from the police or less, aggressive policing. And, he's never had to roll around on the ground trying to take a guy in and he's going to tell you about it.
You don't think?
And this could be the department trying to protect it. Okay, you don't want us to do this. You're not going to prosecute things. You're not going to back us. Okay, here's what we do. No more anti-crime. And now you don't have to worry about that anymore until your crime stats go up and people start getting shot and people start getting killed.
Billy, that's a great theory. That is, I love that theory, by the way. So let's go. Let's keep going here. What's your theory there, Scott?
Well, the PC's own words were the reason why they abolished the anti-crime program was because of the amount of shootings that the anti-crime cops got into, as opposed to all of the rest of the department. Now, of course, they're going to be, in more combat situations. Why? Because they're the gun cops. They're the ones who are going after the violent offenders, the robbers, the predators. Okay,
which
obviously,
actually helps Billy Ryan's argument there, because
yes,
it's one of those things where since we're in the middle of this whole department pandemic about shootings and stuff like that, why don't we try to minimize the amount of shootings we're getting in, and why not look at where the highest amount of police involved shootings are coming from, and it's anti-crime. Let's just eliminate that. All right.
Well, that's what they did. That's exactly what they did.
What do you think?
But you know something, you eliminate the amount of shootings that anti-crime gets in, you increase the amount of shootings that the community gets in, because there's no one out there taking the guns away from the shooters.
Absolutely.
And, the anti-crime is going to engage these shooters who are criminals. A lot of the guy who killed the double murder in Brooklyn, he just got out. He was on parole. He did 15 years upstate for shooting someone else. So you want him to shoot people at a much higher rate. The police don't get in that many shootings.
You guys want to hear my theory?
You know what, Bill? This is.
Go ahead.
Sure.
No, go ahead, Billy.
Well, I mean, I think I was a lifeguard for a while. And one of the things they teach you when you're a lifeguard is when the guy is drowning and he's got the fight going in him, sometimes you got to let him go under a little bit, take the fight out of him before you can rescue him. And I kind of think that this is going to be like that. Okay. Everybody's fighting. The city doesn't want us to do this. Don't be aggressive. Don't take guns on the streets. Don't go into these communities to start problems. Okay, so we got to let them drown a little bit. When the fight comes out of them, it'll be, okay, lifeguard, come in and save me. I mean, and that's going to take a while. I don't know if it's going to be a year or 5 years or whatever, but I think that's what's going to happen. I mean, it's just, anti-crime's not coming back. And I mean, it's just, no one wants it. I mean,
Billy Ryan, that's a great.
We're leaving the.
But unfortunately,
give me a second, Scott.
We're going to be drowning in blood.
Scott, give me a second here. Billy, that was great. That was great, and it adds to what my theory was, what I wanted to tell you, which was, I think we're going towards privatized policing, and I think that what happened in the city. Basically, I think the municipalities all throughout these big cities, they want to rid themselves of this. They want more freedom with the budget, and the police and the jails that eat up a lot of budget. They want to be able to give this money away. Now, what happened in New York City? I mean, that's prime real estate, man. That went all over the world. Okay, those people are not going to sit there and listen to businesses being destroyed underneath them. We're going towards privatized policing. Those people are going to, at some point, hire their own security. And this guy's already talking about cutting $1 billion off the police budget after a weekend where he just had 40 shootings. So he's not paying attention to what's going on. He's looking towards the future. And the future is making these people who can't afford it hire their own private security companies and get the police department down. The more security companies that you have, the less lawsuits you have against the city, the less pensions you have to pay out, the less sick care you have to pay out. I tell you something right now, the department right now at 35,000 will probably be 20,000 within 10 years. And the rest of privatized security.
But you know something, who's going to suffer? The poor people in the hood. That's who's going to suffer. Because
the idea is we're going to be their police department. It's still going to be the NYPD, but we're only going to be handling the poor neighborhoods.
Well, they're talking about having social workers respond to some of these jobs. There's going to be a lot of dead social workers, because you don't send a social worker. A lot of times social workers will ask for a police escort. You know that, Scott. You know that, Bill, right? They ask for a police escort. They're not going to go into
ACS right there.
Yeah.
Look at all the dead children because of ACS and their incapability. So what did they do? ACS hired all retired detectives to teach the social workers how to investigate. And
I've said this before. The most competent arm of government is the police department. The rest of them are a bunch of retards, including the city council. All these politicians, they're morons, and they just want more money.
You know what?
And the mayor should recall the mayor. He is a buffoon.
Listen, I was talking to Bill about this, Bill, my partner, Bill, the other day. And, I'm part of a program in the academy that teaches the in-service members how to be able to detect mental illness. So we act out scenarios for them. Billy, Ryan, you're an actor. You'd be, you would definitely enjoy this. And part of the third part of that, so they come in for training and they learn how to, what's the difference between different type of mental illnesses, dementia, suicidal, bipolar, autism. And they watch, then in the afternoon, they watch the scenarios. And then the idea is supposed to be, at some point, they were going to get clinicians, they're going to have like an EDP car. And any type of call that comes over the radio, let's say within Manhattan North, there'll be an EDP car and they would respond there with the clinician. But that part of the program never really kind of took off yet. I don't know whether it was legalities, figuring out if these people are going to wear a vest, are they going to sit somewhere until they're needed, are they going to be driving around? I would imagine this is still a lot of, but that was the goal.
Or who's going to take that job?
It was already.
Now, may I interject? May I interject in this?
Yes, Scott. Come on, give it to me, Scott.
As a former member of the hostage negotiation team, we were trained, and when we completed our training, we were all given titles as psychological emergency technicians. We all received certificates, okay? And the hostage negotiation course is a long, tough course, okay? It's a very select group. I'm not trying to toot my own horn or anything. You got to have at least 5 years as a detective. You have to be recommended by a negotiator. You go through an extensive interview process. Then you have to attend. When I attended, it was a 2-month course because you have to go through the whole ESU training. You go through the heavy weapons, and then it was constant role play. Okay. And we were taught to recognize, again, certain individuals that had emotional problems versus actual perps versus people who were suicidal, things of that nature. Again, you can't expect, and again, we also did in-service training 3 to 4 times a year. Plus, after any incident, we had an immediate, breakdown. Even if it was a 17-hour job, we had to have a debriefing right after it. Now, again, how can you expect cops to go through a 1 or 2 day course? And I don't feel qualified with all that training to look at someone and say, oh, he's a schizophrenic or he's bipolar. Okay? I mean, none of us can say that. And I have a certificate to back it up in court. But that being said, I'm not a psychologist or a psychiatrist. And we all know, politically correct, that's who can only make that determination. You can't put a cop through a 2 or 3 day course. And I'm not trying to knock your course, but I'm saying you can't put a cop through a 2 or 3 day course and expect him or her to make those decisions. You really can't.
Scott, you have a 10 bar?
Yeah.
You have a 10 bar?
Sure.
Can you tell when anyone is drunk? You can't.
No. Some people are completely functional and drunk.
Perfectly so. When I was a bartender, when someone walked in and I thought they were drunk, I would say, what would you like? And they would say, beer. And I'd say, what kind of beer? And then you go, oh, fucking Budweiser. I mean, get out. Because they were drunk.
Is that you?
You don't want to serve someone that's drunk because they become a bigger problem. But you know what I mean? The answer is you can't really tell.
No. I mean, look at Mark. I can't never tell if Mark.
But I was a trained bartender. I did some drinking too,
Hey, Bill. Hey, Scott. When you said you mentioned the role playing that you did in the hostage negotiator, what was the coolest outfit you had to put on? Did you ever have to do like a cowboy thing or?
No. We always were the negotiators. You guys.
Naked cowboy in Times Square.
I thought you put on some leather chaps, and then you whipped the guy into submission.
We had a bunch of out-of-work soap stars and stuff who did the work for us. They got a scenario, we got a scenario.
You never put on the you never put on the leather chaps and slide somebody into submission.
I saved that for home. And hanging out with you.
We're doing role plays up there. So yeah, there we go, man. Everybody has a theory, and it's funny because I always like to think, like take a bird's eye view, what's actually happening right now. So it's interesting that we all have our theories, but we all agree that crime is going to go up significantly, and it already has, the amount of shootings. And it's kind of ironic in a way, because in a horrible way, because all these things that we're doing right now with the protesting and stuff like that, once again we go back to the people that are hurt the most are the people of color. In Chicago, it's just whatever area that is, man, they're averaging 30, 40 10 homicides a weekend, man. It's like insane.
I mean, when was the last time Chicago wasn't like that? I mean, this is not a new thing in Chicago.
Before they removed the problem with Chicago was, from what I read, was that they removed they locked up all the crime lords. They hit them with the RICO Act, and then all these drug gangs got broken up, and all the continuous fights for leadership over there in that area of Chicago. That's what I heard. Sometimes taking out the bosses, it tends to backfire on you when there's that everybody's fighting for power now.
Well, I was in New York City in the 90s in the Heights. Everyone was killing each other for the corner. The corners, the tight corners, right?
Well, that's what was going on during the crack.
The Heights were ridiculous. I mean,
now it leaves us with this question: where would you move to? I was looking around, and Finland looks really nice right now. I'm not talking about moving to some other place in the country.
You know something? I'll tell you.
Yeah, but the commute's going to kill you.
This makes me. All of this makes me sad, because in the 30 years it took to lower crime 70% in New York City, they're going to give it back in 5. And areas of the city, maybe
less than 5. Less than 5. Less than 5.
Bill Ryan, you worked in Times Square back in the 80s, and you remember people used to just come to Times Square to commit crimes, commit robberies, pickpockets. It was like a crime.
It was nuts. And it was funny. They used to do, and one of the great ways we used to make late night robbery collars is they would go out in front of all the stores after they closed down for the night and roll down the gates, and they'd have canvases with things on it like "Ain't No Smiling" on Rikers Island and "Going to the Deuce to Get Paid." And guys remember that, and they would sit there posing with their guns and their money and take Polaroids, and we just sit out there and watch them. And they would take out there's the thing, here's my guns out. Gotcha. Finally, it was great. We take the Polaroid.
Finally, the Midtown South CEO banned those pictures. What a great idea, And them taking pictures in front of those.
I wasn't happy about that.
Yeah. The poor entrepreneurs with those
the guns that way.
I remember when.
Yeah, well.
When the first portable video cameras came out back in the early 80s, and what we did in my anti-crime unit is one of the guys brought one in, and it was the most amazing thing. If you wanted to clear a corner, all you had to do was stick that video camera out the window with the light, and it was amazing.
I used to just do that with a radio and turn it sideways, and the whole corner would
clear. Exactly.
So did I.
You wanted to clear that corner. It was condition corrected.
I loved doing that.
It was so funny. But we used to do observations, and we'd have vacant apartments or whatever, and we did do videotaping. We were ahead of our time, on our own. Scotty, and we brought these videos to the DA to view. And
I always liked even took the picture of a crowd after a homicide, because chances are
I always had the press, especially the freelance guys, If I had a crime scene, show up. I'd ask the guy, do me a favor, just walk through the crowd with the camera on, the light off. That's all. Do me a favor. And then in exchange, I'd let him get a money shot. Pull a sheet back or whatever. Let him get his money shot.
When you pull a guy in later and he says, I wasn't even out there. You pull up.
Exactly.
Yes,
Exactly.
you are.
And you'd be surprised what he'd walk through the crowd, what you'd hear them say.
Yeah.
They'd say, oh, look what Johnny did.
Yeah.
It was amazing. Pretty amazing. But we did that quite often.
You know what,
just as good as a line.
Billy Bryan, since you're into conspiracy theories, what do you think about the fact that, as far as the federal government not getting involved in any of these cities like Chicago or what was going on in Seattle with CHOP, and do you think they're giving them enough rope to hang themselves? Almost, because I know they mentioned about making Antifa a terrorist group, but I think they might want to. They're waiting for BLM to get a couple of homicides underneath their belt to join them, and then they'll make it a federal thing, and they'll put them both underneath terrorist groups.
Well, I think Antifa is a terrorist group. BLM, I think there's a good part of it, but do I think they give them enough rope to hang themselves? I think a little bit of it is payback. I think, part of the federal government is saying, hey, you're democratic cities. You won't do the things we ask you to do. Like when they want, they're denying ICE access to courts. New York City is denying ICE access to even New York State DMV records. And I think after a while, when the federal government keeps getting no from these cities and the states, eventually, like, okay, you guys want to handle it? Go handle it. And when you're drowning, like I said, maybe then they'll come in and say, come help us. And, it's interesting. I don't know if you've seen this. I guess this is the arson guy in me. But a great many of the arson arrests, these people who are getting arrested for burning police cars and police vehicles and police stations, these are being made by ATF agents, FBI agents, in conjunction with some of the local guys. But you see all these cases. They're going to federal court. They're not going to the state courts, or at least I haven't seen one go to the state court yet. That's what I'm talking about, Billy. The 2 lawyers they locked.
That's what I'm talking about.
Yeah. Exactly. So is it conspiracy theory?
It's not.
I'm
show it
to you.
Look, every day if you look at the newspaper, or if you not the newspaper, but if you're online, who looks at a newspaper? But if you read the news,
what's a newspaper?
You notice that they're grabbing 1 or 2 of these people every single day. And I'm sure if you go down to the FBI, they got a wall.
Thank God.
They got a wall of people that they're going to be picking up. All these people that they think they got away with it.
Have you heard about the newest conspiracy theory? That I read it online today. That all the firework issues are being provided by Antifa. That Antifa, like they did the pallets of bricks for the riots, are being, like, truckloads are supposedly being brought in to certain neighborhoods, opened up and given out wholesale. And supposedly July 4th, there's supposed to be a whole thing with Antifa, and masking everything through the fireworks.
So how do I buy fireworks from Antifa? How do I buy wholesale fireworks?
You know what?
I
think we're a little bit. Well, listen, I don't believe it for a minute.
Billy Ryan,
I'll give you
what
the bricks.
Do you say?
I'll give you the Antifa. I said I'll give you the Antifa with the bricks, but in terms of fireworks, listen, when wasn't there a lot of fireworks right before the 4th of July? I think now, like guns, they see there's less cops coming out, less enforcement, so it's coming out more. But is it really radically more? I think we're kind of, we're getting a little oversensitive about it. I just see that there's fireworks all the time, and I think once the holiday's over, we could later, it's going to be gone.
Hey, Billy, you live in the Bronx. The other night, right?
I do.
I heard some fireworks outside, right? And it was incredibly loud, like just like boom, boom, like really, really loud. I knew it was fireworks, But I just decided to peek my head out, and I looked, and I could see them blowing off about a mile away. Whatever the fuck this guy was shooting, I mean, it looked nice, it was colorful, but it was making a lot. It was powerful, and I thought the guy was next door. I thought it was my neighbor doing it, and the guy was a mile away at least.
Well,
that's why we've never had fireworks like this. I never recall fireworks this much.
Oh, bro, go to Howard Beach.
That's because your parents never loved you, Scott.
No, I used to make my trips down to Chinatown as a kid.
The police aren't going to enforce fireworks anymore because it's a small offense, and the city won't back them. The politicians won't back them, you know? So they're not going to enforce it. That's the bottom line.
There's going to be a lot of these guys.
Yeah.
There's going to be a lot of this year, 4th of July. You're talking about Antifa coming. There's going to be a lot of these guys.
Yeah, Human Euro and the Giants, right? He lost his.
We can only hope. We can only hope. But you know, the task force wasn't put together.
When you were growing up, we all grew up in this city. When you were growing up, wasn't there always one guy? He already had like 10 beers in him. He had one beer. He had an M80 over here, a cigarette, and he was fucking lighting it.
Yep. Sticking it in mailboxes. Yeah, there was always someone.
There's always one guy, man, with a fucking half a lit cigarette and an M80 in each finger.
There's no reason not to have.
Yeah, a week later you called Lefty.
But you notice the task force for the fireworks.
I think a lot of it.
Wasn't done until the people on the Upper East Side started complaining about the noise. Then the task force was put together for the fireworks, and they made a bunch of seizures. How hard is it to make a fireworks seizure? Really? Go down to Chinatown, walk around, go down to Little Italy and walk around. You can make a fireworks seizure. It's not hard, believe me. We used to be in court and go to eat, and guys would attack us in court, coming out of court. You know, to buy this, buy that. I mean, it's always been there. Yeah. But I've never seen, and I've never heard it the way it is now, in my opinion, in my whole life. Even when I was a kid, it was like this.
You know, one of the things I wanted to touch upon, too, something just came out from the city council and more or less touches upon the rules of engagement. And I couldn't believe what I was reading. They were saying they don't want cops to put their knee in the back of a perp while he's getting cuffed. And then all these other prohibitions, and actually making the cop criminal, making it a criminal act if the cop does that. I mean, who would ever want to make an arrest? I was trained to put my knee in the perp's back in order to get him cuffed. And if a perp is fighting you, how do you make rules of engagement where you're fighting for your life and they're telling you, you can't do this, you can't do that, you can't. I'd like to have the city council go out and wrestle some of these jailhouse jacks that just got out, you know?
Well, we were also trained in the academy. We were trained to use chokeholds.
Right.
And what were you drilled? It was always drilled into you. Follow your training. Fall back on your training. Fall back on your training. Now, they passed the laws, but they did it before they retrained everybody. The entire department, from Monahan, 4-star chief of department, down to the rookie, has to be now retrained in physical force.
Yeah.
Physically retrained. How else can you do it?
But how do you make it criminal for a cop to use certain techniques that he was taught to get a criminal handcuffed? How do you make the cop criminal?
Exactly. How? That's
what, Bill,
governor and our mayor. How? And the city council. That's what they wanted.
Look when you had things with the Pantaleo matter and in Staten Island, where they had the CO of, firearms and tactics or whoever it was, people who are the trainers in this getting up in there saying, this is a chokehold and that's not a chokehold. So, I mean, if guys who are wearing our uniform are saying that, and I'm not saying I agree with them, but if they're getting up and saying that, how can the public turn around and go, well, another cop is saying that, the guy that's doing the training, he's saying it's a chokehold or he's saying it's an illegal move or whatever. And I think, we hurt ourselves. And I think, no matter how much you train, here's something I've always wondered my entire career. Every year we have to go back twice and go back to the range and qualify with our firearms. but we never have to go back for any kind of training with batons, cuffing techniques, any kind of non-lethal things. I mean, that's it. Once you walk out of the academy, whatever you took with you, that's all you're keeping with you. You were told to practice with your gun and be ready for it. But I mean, your baton, your cuffing techniques, any kind of non-lethal force, why aren't we brought up in that? Why isn't, I mean, you're more likely to grab a guy and wrestle with them than you are going to shoot him. I mean, the majority of us, I think it's less than % of cops ever fire their guns. But most cops, at least the good ones, were out there cuffing people and grabbing them. And, is it something that you can just fix with training? I mean,
training costs money, and they don't want to bring you in for training because those are days or weeks or months you're off the street. So they joke about, they talk about training.
Okay, but what does a lawsuit cost?
Pay for it.
Well, that's another thing about private.
Okay, Bill, but what is?
There's no lawsuits.
Well, I agree with Bill. I agree with Bill totally on this. Just it's the same thing when they talked about the suicide and how to give counseling. You go to the range twice a year. Why can't you go see a shrink twice a year? I mean, really. It takes the stigma out. Mark, you brought that up a while ago.
Scott, you bring up a good point, but Billy Ryan wasn't done with his. What were you finishing up saying, Billy?
Well, I'm just saying, to Bill's point, yes, training's expensive. I get that, but you know what? What are lawsuits costing you? What is the perception of the department by all the communities? I mean, it's when you're selling things, one of the things I was taught when I was a salesman years ago is it's not what it costs, it's what it's worth. You tell me what things like that being fixed or being lessened would be worth. I mean, I think training comes in cheap with that. I think you could stand up in front of the city council and argue that you'd want money for training before you turn around and say, hey, we had this many lawsuits this year.
I agree with Billy Ryan. I agree with you, but here's the problem, okay? We have failed to make adjustments. We're policing prehistorically. Once this thing got developed, the camera,
absolutely
should have been a complete different way of starting to go about policing and training. We have so many non-lethal weapons out there. I see that Bolo advertisement every single day, the thing that wraps around your legs, wraps around your torso, but won't wrap around your neck. And my point is this, all these non-lethal weapons are out there, but the problem is they don't want to implement them because they don't want the police to ever have the upper hand anymore. That's my conspiracy theory, because the reality is, why wouldn't you use them? Why aren't we using stun guns right now instead of freaking rounds where you could stun somebody, make them incapable of fucking moving, then you can cuff them, and that's it. The technology's out there. It's prehistoric.
They don't work all the time. They're not 100%. They don't always work.
Oh, really? Well, does the gun work 100% of the time?
Mark, pepper spray and mace only works on cops.
Forget about pepper spray and mace. I'm talking about non-lethal weapons that are the more effective.
Well, even the tasers. Remember when the tasers came out? Sergeants had them on.
There's much better tasers. There's stun guns. You should have a gun right now that can either shoot around or stun somebody. I'm talking, we are prehistoric right now. Once they started filming everything and it was a hands-off thing, we never, ever made adjustments, ever.
You're correct. Look how long it took this department to go to 9mm. Look how long it took. And we were one of the last departments in the country to go to 9s.
You hired people that can't fight. There used to be a height requirement. There was a lot of, they just a whole bunch of physical tests that needed to be passed. And then all that stuff went through the wayside. So you have people that can't defend themselves physically, and you took away all their weapons, and the only thing they have left is the gun.
Yeah, but I also think that society expects too much of the police. I really do. They want you to be
absolutely.
Yeah, I agree. I
agree too.
Be able to deliver babies. They want you to be able to psychoanalyze someone, tell if someone's an EDP or drunk. A normal human being isn't Superman.
Every
100 hats of Officer Jones. Remember that book?
Every single video that I watch, whether it's a Karen or it's somebody getting assaulted during one of these protests, they always say the same thing. I'm going to call the cops. Stop. Do you want me to call the police? It's so ingrained in people's mind. Even when Antifa's getting beat up, they say, call the cops. You understand what I'm saying?
I do.
I have a video where the guy's in Antifa, he's getting beat up, and he's telling his friends to call the police.
Well, there's one video where the guy's actually holding on to the cop. He's hiding behind the cop, begging him for help because they were beating him down. And I thought that was hysterical.
Mommy,
very ironic.
And then you have people actually going to court to defund the police, using police as security. Politicians.
But you know what? I mean, I'm sure you've done this. I mean, I won't out the celebrities, but I've done a lot of bodyguard work for famous people and rich people. And I got to tell you, a lot of them are these big anti-gun guys. And I'm like, yeah, because you've got me and 3 other guys all walking around with 9mm and no martial arts, you know, so are you really, you know, kind of a hypocrite, you know, you live in a gated community, guards on it, you know.
They're all hypocrites. They're all hypocrites because at the end of the day, these people that can afford their own security, they're going to get it. They're not going to sleep at night in their $1 million apartment and hear the windows breaking below them in the commercial establishments, wondering, are they going to run right past my doorman and up to my apartment and kill me and rape me? They're not going to put up with that shit. You know, they created that what's it called, the congestion pricing zone in Manhattan. That was supposed to come out, but I don't know. It's probably going to
coming 2021. It's supposed to come out.
Well, but it may be pushed back now with all this shit. But that was the first zone in New York City. That was going to be like a residential zone because at some point the people that lived in that zone would be able to, they weren't going to have to pay to drive their car out of that zone and in that zone. So now we created.
Yeah, have gated communities. I mean, you know, Scott, you know, in Brooklyn, you've got Seagate up in Coney Island. I mean, that's a gated community part of Brooklyn. It's got its own police force.
And I mean, police department. They have a Seagate police.
Yeah, and I mean, they do, and I mean, I think, you know, to Mark's point, I think you're going to start seeing that. But you know, as cops, we'll understand jurisdiction. You know, I can't go into Europe, or you can't go into mine. But you know, who's going to start letting security guards? You know, when this crime is being committed, the DA's going to go with this.
Well, I think it's going to go like this.
How neutral?
Billy, this is how it's going to go. If you ever, I was in the 2-6.
Let me hear it.
I was in the 2-6 squad. You had Columbia University, you know, their head of security was run by a retired first grader, great guy. He used to give me a case. It was everything in there except the body. It was all the 61s, all the photos, where he's at, and it was the whole thing. And you see, so within a city, within a precinct, you have private security, tons of cameras. That Columbia University extends itself now well into Harlem, and then it's met by the Yeshiva University out of Washington Heights that also has a lot of housing and their own private security. And that's what I'm talking about. These neighborhoods, one by one, are going to have their own private security within. So if you make a collar as a security, you're going to give it to the NYPD. But you're basically going to be the ones responsible for patrolling in those areas.
But there are also private developments like Starrett City or up in Co-op City that their security have peace officer status. A lot of them are armed and they can make arrests on duty.
Yeah. It's all going to be.
I think that's the trend. That's going to be the trend of what's going to happen.
Have the money to give away. They want to have the money to give away. And these municipalities, they weigh heavy on the budget.
Well, how about this, Mark? Now, when all these things happen, who's going to be the ones giving out the contracts? Is it going to be contracts we bid on? Like I have a PI shop, we do security work. Can I go bid on that contract, or is it the individual guys going to hire it? I mean, you know, is it going to go to the lowest?
I think it's going to be communities. Yeah. They're going to form communities, zones, areas, and they're going to decide that we're going to chip in. All the residents and homeowners here are going to chip in a certain amount of money. be at $25 a month so we can hire our own security. And they could go from 96th Street to 42nd Street on the east side and on the west side, and they'll hire their own securities. And that's I think that's the future, what's going to happen.
You know something, the crown jewels of Manhattan, the Lincoln Centers, the theater district, those will always be protected. But how about the millennial who, because it's been so safe, moved to Flatbush, moved to do or die Bed-Stuy, moved to neighborhoods where he didn't used to be able to live in, but because it was so safe, moved there. Now, these comics that we know, are they going to be taking the train at 2:00 in the morning now? I don't think so anymore, because
that's the transients anyway. Those people are transients, and I, you know what? When those people start spouting up, and I don't think you should be able to vote unless you got a vested interest in that neighborhood. You own property, you've been there for more than 5 years, you got a child that you're raising in a neighborhood, because they come there and they fucking overturn everything and they bitch about everything, and the reality is they're going to be gone in fucking 2 years anyway.
But let's get back to what happens to the
Scott,
population.
where do you want to go? Scott, where do you want to go, Scott?
No, I'm just wondering. It's what you're saying is very true and possible. But then again, what happens to the population, for instance, of public housing in this city? The majority of which
the city cops. The city cops.
No, but I'm just saying the majority of it
be in charge of patrolling the poor people.
Well, exactly.
That's the irony of it all.
But the poor people don't want the cops there.
But nobody's going to care at that point.
No, I good people that live in city housing, they do want the cops. They want to be protected.
No, they're going to have the cops. They're going to have the cops.
I think it's the bad guys that don't want the cops around. I mean, I remember even with Comstat,
Absolutely.
Someone would try to come back to the projects after doing 5 years, and they'd be like, "No, you're not coming back here. You're a convicted felon." I don't think it worked. They tried to keep them out of the housing projects, but I don't think it worked. But now everyone's welcome.
You know, Bill, I'm just worried that, with all this going on, we're the sheepdogs and we're leaving the sheep to the wolves out there. I mean, especially in these poorer communities where, you've got a lot of predator guys going out there, gangs and drug dealers. And I mean, these are the people that want you there. They're the ones that are going out saying, hey, we want the police here. They're the ones being victimized. And, we need to hear the voices in the community who feel like that supporting us, because right now this is the time. But I mean,
but I don't think you're not hearing not one voice out of them. You don't hear one voice.
But see, again, we used to have a saying that bullets had no eyes, and you see, like today, or last night actually, 17-year-old honor student in the Bronx. He's going to St. John's, just graduated high school 2 weeks ago. Straight A kid, dead. I mean, a little girl shot in East Harlem the other night. I mean, a bullet has no eyes. It goes where it goes, and it's out of control when little children are getting hit. And innocents are getting hit. I mean, really, we all dealt with what we used to call misdemeanor homicides. Come on, let's face facts. But now it's so out of control, it's turning into Chicago. We're going to have weekends with 40, 50 shootings, and bodies dropping like flies.
I got to ask you, if this is all going on, then how do you announce a $1 billion cut to the police department while all these shootings are going on? Like, how do you announce that? Like,
that's the problem. And tomorrow it's going to be done. It's going to be done tomorrow.
Like, so you have to, in my head, I'm like, okay, so what is the freaking thought behind this? Because you can't be telling me
what his head.
The guy hasn't said a word about any of this.
After what occurred in the 3-2, all right, early Saturday morning, I'm sure you saw the video of that disgusting, obscene behavior that went on. And it wasn't no protest. The cops responded to a valid shots fired job. They recovered casings. There was lead. And the crowd just turned on them, and they had to retreat. Okay? And again, did de Blasio say anything about it the next morning? No. The next morning, he was painting the gutter in front of Brooklyn Borough Hall with yellow paint, BLM.
Yeah.
I mean, really? You worried about budget cuts? Stop spending money on yellow paint.
The cops are up.
Remember, he's term limited out, so he doesn't have to worry about getting reelected. He's done.
Exactly.
But you know something? We had Louis Anamone, Chief Louis Anamone, the greatest chief of the department probably in the history of this job. He was on in
Absolutely.
November, and we asked. That was when the cops were getting the water poured over him, and we said, "Chief, is this a national war on police?" And he said, "Absolutely. I've never seen anything like this." That was in November. So look what's happened since then.
Well, he's a smart man, and he could see the writing on the wall.
Yep.
And our mayor,
globalization stuff, it's got to be open borders. You got to get rid of ICE. You got to get rid of the police. You got to. That's what open border. That's what globalization is. I mean, if you think about it, how can you go to Mars and then have it, but with no papers, and then but you got to in order to get into the United States, you got to have a passport, a visa, a leave date. I mean, that's the idea here. It's all about globalization. It's about getting rid of our boundaries and our territories, and people being able to float around and go wherever they want. You know, the COVID didn't help, but that's the goal, I would imagine.
I don't know.
I don't know either what the answer to that is.
See the city go to pot, and I don't mean that literally. I just mean to go to shit. We work too hard, and it really saddens me to see what's happening now.
And you know what? Did you see that couple that was in front of their house with the guy with the? I don't know what that. I don't even know what these guns are. It looked like an AK-47.
Yeah, he had an AR-15, and the wife had a pistol, and they were just peaceful protesters.
I like the way she was holding the gun. She was like this.
I saw that today.
He didn't go to the range. He was watching gangster movies.
Because there wasn't any money in the budget for it.
In Kentucky the other day.
Right now, if there's anything that's good about it, it's people like they're gonna have to fucking learn how to negotiate shit on themselves. Because if your dog shit in my yard, I'm calling the cops. I'm not even knocking on your door. That's the kind of world we lived in at some point. And the reality is, you got to fucking talk to people. You got to negotiate.
And that goes back to cops learning to talk to people. And where did you learn that skill? You learned that skill from the old timers, and you learned that skill from being an anti-crime.
I thought you were gonna say role playing with the cowboy outfit on.
No. You were wrong. But again,
the chaps.
In all seriousness, cops, they don't realize that the best weapon they have is their mouth. They don't realize that. That, you know, forget de-escalation. Okay, you just have the gun is come on. We've all faced guys that'll take that, they'll tell you, I'll take that gun and shove it up your ass, and I'll wait for the sergeant to come and lock me up. Because they like jail. Okay? There are guys, pull a gun on them. Dead. And they'll tell you, God, what are you gonna do? That's why, you know, you have to learn to talk to people. You have to learn to schmooze. You have to learn to, you know, listen. That's what we were taught as negotiators. You had to be active listeners. You had to listen to what people were saying, what their complaints were, what their problems were, their issues, so you could get them out of the situation they were in.
What'd you say, Scott?
I said, as negotiators, all right, keep it up.
You know who was the king of that?
You know that you're a pain in the ass, but I love you.
You got to be active listeners.
You know who's the king of that? Mark, the king of being able to do that. Pete Pranzo, who was on here before, just a tremendous lieutenant, but he used to have he would go up to these guys in the street with us, and his line was, they're a good kid, I like them. Come on, we'll all go back to the precinct. And we'd have these tough guys, and he would just charm them out. And, you know, there really wasn't the need for being able to get, I mean, listen, I'm not saying we never had to scrap with guys, but I mean, when you had somebody like that showing you the way, and I mean, to this day, you know, I carried it with me forever. You know, he's a good kid. I like him. And thank you, Pete. I'm sure you're watching. And Harlem Raiders, go buy his book.
Give a little shout out to Pete as well, because I grew up in the 7-1, and Pete and Esposito, who turned out to be what he turned out to be, unfortunately, partners. And I can't tell you how many times they took me home and put a boot in my butt. And that's one of the reasons I became a cop, was because of Pranzo and, you know, Louis Ippolito. I mean, unfortunately, Pranzo's the best. But I owe my career to Pranzo, ironically. And
why?
It's good.
Yeah, just so you know, you leave yourself wide open for jokes. That boot in the butt one, I had one going. I let you finish your sentence, but that was an easy one.
I got broad shoulders, bro. I can take it.
So listen, we've reached the hour mark, and this is where we give our closing thoughts. So, what do you think, Bill? Who do you want to start off with?
Well, let's start with Bill Ryan, and then we'll go to Scotty.
Oh, here's my closing thoughts. You know what? Today's the anniversary of Lou Alvarez's first year of his death. So I just wanted to take a minute and mark that. A detective in the bomb squad who succumbed to his injuries in 9/11. So I want to not let the night go without honoring his sacrifice to our cause and our great city. So Lou, we love you and we miss you. And his memory will continue to be a blessing. And, you know, listen, all the cops out there watching, all week, you know, there's a great expression. Sometimes there's justice and sometimes there's just us. You know, we have to watch out for each other and protect ourselves. And, you know, remember, there's a lot of good people out here that want us to be here. And you know, we're out here like Vernon Gephardt used to say, you know, we work for God. Well, you know, we do. We work for God. We do what we got to do. And, you know, I'm proud to be a cop. I'm a son of a cop. And I think all of us, you know, are proud of what we did. And I just want to say, you know, stand strong out there, guys. You know, we will have our comeback. You know, they'll miss us when we're gone, but we're coming back. It's just going to take a while.
Yeah. Scotty?
I can't agree with what he said more. Again, you know, being a retired detective and having a son now on the job, it's difficult because, you know, I can't even, he comes to me with questions that I can't even really answer anymore because times have changed so drastically. I just try to tell him to learn to talk to people, learn people's skills,
Absolutely.
and literally better to be judged by 12 than carried by 6. If you have to save your life and you're in fear of your life, you do what you have to do to go home at night to, you know, my daughter-in-law. That's what you have to do. But otherwise, the times are what they are, okay? And hopefully, we can only hope that there's someone of reason and intelligence steps in and puts an end to this before we go back to the 90s, you know, when we were almost close to 3,000, you know, murders a year. And we went down, you know, that was our back. We did that. We brought this back, you know? And
you're 100% right, Scott.
It's such a bad feeling to have.
Shame. It's a
shame.
Being
retired and helpless and not being able to do anything about it and bring it back to the way it, you know, the way it was, down to 300 a year. Imagine that, you know, in one generation we did this. And now we're losing it. It's gone. We're back to 96 numbers, back in 96. Yeah. And it's
Bill Cannon, what do you got for us, Bill Cannon?
All right, I just want to say, since I was 6.5 years in anti-crime, my heart really aches that they got rid of the best unit on the entire police department. Years ago, they got rid of street crime. Anti-crime is such an art form, and it takes a while to learn. And I was lucky. I was taught by an 11-year street crime veteran who was my sergeant. And he taught me well, not all of his tricks, but he taught me a lot of his tricks. And I later passed that on when I was a sergeant. I was a 2-4 anti-crime sergeant. And I can't tell you the skill and the amount of time it takes to really learn anti-crime to where you're good at it. And anti-crime, the perps fear anti-crime because they know those are the toughest.
Absolutely.
In the precinct. But now that the city's disbanded anti-crime, the perps don't have to fear the uniformed cops because the uniformed cops don't have the stealthness. They don't have the time to observe and watch, see who's carrying the guns, see who's robbing people. Anti-crime was out there blending in with the community, you know? And as I said, it's a real bad thing that the city got rid of anti-crime, and I don't think they can be replaced by anyone else.
They'll miss us when we're gone, buddy.
In parting words, I just wanted to say thank you guys for coming on the show. Bill, for coming on.
Thanks for having us.
For the first time.
Thank you.
And I have to say, Bill, man, you were a great guest. I really enjoyed everything that you had to say.
Thank you.
I agree with you, especially when we talk
to...
about anti-crime, and you're talking about the fact that maybe they were pulled out of harm's way. If we're not going to prosecute, if we're not going to take these cases seriously, then why put our cops in harm's way? That makes a lot of sense to me. Scott, I agree with what you have to say about talking to people and learning that art. Unfortunately, that's a gift. That's a gift a lot of times that you either have it or you don't. And if you don't have it, you got to observe somebody who has it and try your best. I worked with a bunch of people who weren't the best talkers. I was lucky enough to, not to get into too many scuffles because of the fact that I just knew how to let somebody know you got to go. This is, you know what you did. I don't know how I did it, but I did it. And Bill, I agree with you, man. The city's going to definitely suffer. And we are suffering already. But, back to what I was saying, I think it's already in the cards. I think it's something that's already written. I think it's something that they've wanted to push for a long time. And that's minimizing what the police department has to get involved in. They don't want the police department having to deal with the homeless anymore. They don't want the police department having to deal with the mentally ill anymore. They feel like they can send out social workers for both of those. Okay, fine. You want to take that burden off your hands? Good. But you know what's going to happen as well as I do? There's going to be a situation that they go to, and there's going to have to be an escort car. And then all of a sudden, the guy's my height, 6'4". He's naked. He's not built as well as I am. Probably doesn't smell as good as I do. And all of a sudden, all the theories and the ideas go right out the window. So we all have our own theories here, but the bottom line is we know that we all agree that now is not a really good time. And we're wishing for the best.
Not at all.
We're wishing for the best. And I appreciate you guys coming on. And we look forward to having you guys come on again for future discussions. Your opinions are valuable, and they need to be heard. And that's why we do this show.
It was a pleasure.
Just to plug Police Off the Cuff, we're starting to kick ass wise. We're getting 20,000 viewers or listeners on Anchor per week. We're probably getting another 20,000 a month. We'll probably get another 30 or 40,000 a month on Facebook. We're also getting on YouTube. So our numbers are starting to really go up. And it's all because you guys out there watching. You guys send us messages, how much you love the show. And we put on all the best cops, all the best ADAs, chiefs. We got some of the best people that ever worked the NYPD. And we just want to thank you guys for helping us with this audience.
Bill and I are going to be coming up with a line of merch. And we got some big announcements. We're gonna have coffee cups and hats and T-shirts. Our coffee cups. What is it gonna say, Bill?
Police Off the Cuff,
dipped in butter. Dipped in butter. We got a couple of big announcements coming up.
I want to say balls and dipped in butter, but he said
no. Just dipped in butter. And we got some big announcements coming up in the future. So good things are happening. Thank you for tuning in, and have a great night, and hopefully tomorrow is going to be better than today. Good days are ahead, folks. On behalf of Police Off the Cuff, my name is Mark DeMeo. That's my partner in law enforcement, Bill Cannon. Thank you, Billy Ryan. Thank you, Scott Wagner. Have a great night.
You got it, buddy.
Thanks for tuning in.
Good night. Thank you.
Good night.